blood, come the prince that was promised, and his will be disarmed ice and fire.
An era during the history of Westeros, which would be named so late for the great men and women who lived in the time of peace and prosperity, following the fortune of the Pack. The Pack endured for nearly 4,000 years, and in that time the children of the forest and the first men grew closer together. In time, the first men set aside many of their own traditions to make way for many customs of the children of the forest. With exceptions of the drowned god of the Iron Islands, the Lady of the Waves, and the Lord of the Skies of the Three Sisters, the gods of the children became those of the first men. Many noble houses of Westeros today trace their lineage back to the Age of the Heroes. This was the time where grandiose historical figures are said to live, such as Brandon the Builder, founder of House Stark, Lan the Clever, founder of House Lannister, and it is said with his wit alone he took Casterly Rock from the Casterlys in the Westerlands, or Garth Greenhand, founder of House Gardner in the Reach. The Storm Kings of House Durrandon rose in the Stormlands. A line with the figures such as the founder of Durin's Godgrief, supposed builder of Storm's End, and the Grey King ruling over the Ironborn in the Iron Islands. Historical heroes. Singers call this time the Age of Heroes, a mask for a savage world that bred savage men. Lord Roose Bolton. The Age of Heroes is an epoch in the history of Westeros. It begins approximately 10,000 years ago with the signing of the Pact. The Age of the Heroes lasted for about 4 millennia, from the signing of the Pact until the Andal invasion 6,000 years ago.
The oldest histories we have were written after the Andals came to Westeros. The first men only left us runes on rocks, so everything we think we know about the Age of Heroes and the Dawn Age and the Long Night comes from accounts set down by septons thousands of years later. There are archmaesters at the Citadel who question all of it. Those old histories are full of kings who reigned for hundreds of years, and knights riding around 1,000 years before there were knights. You know the tales, Brandon the Builder, Simeon Star-Eyes, Night's King.
This age is so named for the great heroes who were said to live at this time and had performed great deeds. Some of these heroes were ancestors and founders of later noble houses. The history of the Age of Heroes is primarily remembered through myths and legends, and wasn't really jotted down in books in the Citadel, but is widely known by many. The most notable historical event of this age was the Long Night. This war between the others endured for about 800 years ago. Some say it lasted a generation, and others say that it was the longest known winter of mankind.
"Oh, my sweet summer child," old Nan said quietly, "what do you know of fear? Fear is for the winter, my little lord, when the snows fall 100 feet deep, and the ice wind comes howling out of the north. Fear is for the long night, when the sun hides its face for years at a time, and little children are born and live and die all in darkness, while the dire wolves grow gaunt and hungry, and the white walkers move through the woods."
During the Age of Heroes, Westeros was divided in 7 major territories and kingdoms. Although their names were roughly outlined, it became the 7 kingdoms in present day. Bran the Builder is the legendary figure and is the first king in the north, an ancestor to House Stark, and is known for building the Wall and Winterfell. The Great King is a legendary figure known for slaughtering the sea snake, Nada, and the ancestor of House Greyjoy. The ancestral land of House Casterly was ruled over them, becoming the Westerlands, but they were defeated by a trickster, Lan the Clever, making the House Lannister with only his wit, maintaining a stronghold over Casterly Rock. Kingdom of the Reach. Its contents Highgarden, built by Garth Greenhand, the first king of the Reach, founder of House Gardner and ancestor to many other noble houses within Westeros. Kingdom of Stormland, associated with Durin Godgrief, the first Storm King. He married immortal Lannon and built several different castles to defy the wrath of her parents, the final one being Storm's End. Although Dorne was the first place that the first men touched foot upon when they migrated towards Westeros, the region maintained a steadfast with people the longest, but it was never solidified in any sense until Princess Nymeria of the Rhoynar arrived 1,000 years ago, long after the Age of Heroes. Within A Song in Ice and Fire novels, the Age of Heroes is one of several broader areas of history. It precedes the Dawn Age, in which the first men crossed a land bridge into Westeros. Encompassing the children of the forest, they become in conflict with them for a period of time. Centuries of warfare, the two races met on the Isle of Faces, signing and forging the Pact, which created peace between them. The Age of Heroes is that it is a record of time where the children of the forest and encompassed each other within a war of themselves, going into the long night together as one. During this period of time, many petty kingdoms rose and fell across the continent, their ruling laying the foundation for what would later become the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros. A number of civilization and traditions would be established. During this time, in present-day Westeros, we still see it within the north. The laws of hospitality, guest rights, and the notion that the man who passes the sentence must swing the sword are all dated back from the Age of Heroes. The most noble event that took place during the Age of Heroes was the Long Night, the generational long darkness that set upon Westeros, bringing the first men and the children of the forest in the conflict with the others. The following of the war claimed the lives of many. The children of the forest never truly recovered from it. The White Walkers were pushed back into always winter. The wall was built to keep them out of Westeros, protecting mankind. Society. Before we understand the Age of Heroes, we have to understand what exactly they had during the Age of Heroes. Westeros was a very different place during the Age of Heroes.
The Age of Heroes lasted for thousands of years, in which kingdoms rose and fell. Noble houses were founded and withered away, and great deeds were accomplished.
Specifically comparing it to the War of the Five Kings. Thousands of years ago, many similar traditions, technologies weren't yet established, especially since a lot of that came from the Andals. In present-day Westeros, the idea of the Faith of the Seven being established is not necessarily a thing yet. The Andals have not invaded, and with the Andals came the Faith of the Seven.
The emblems of the Seven serve only to guide us on an uncertain path, to remind us of a higher authority.
And on the morrow.
That is why the old gods of the forest and the Faith of the Seven are put against each other so often in Westeros, because they tried to eradicate the children of the forest when they came in. Similarly, the tradition of knighthood in specific with the Andals. So a knight was not necessarily a thing during this period, though some people still consider legendary figures to be knights, just because it's easier to establish who was a hero and who did what. Within the age, It was also known as the Bronze Age, with the weapons forged with the armor and the swordsmen were only bronze. The first men did not wield iron or steel. Steel weapons was not a thing, and when the Andals invade, they brought that with them. The idea of a king ruling was not necessarily a thing. The maesters believed that there was a leader that lead them into battle or into conquest or whatever you would have it. The idea of a king was not yet founded until the Andals, which this is interesting and fairly significant, especially when it comes to the Starks, because once the Andals started invading and wanted to take waste to the north, they started declaring themselves King of Winter, bestowing the title upon them, showing that you can teach us things, but that doesn't mean that we will lose our customs or give you our own rights. And after the Boltons wanted to declare themselves King of Winter, they switched to calling themselves King in the North, bestowing them the sovereign title of the region. The Andals possessed far better architectural technology than the first men, and constructing many of the larger castles known to stand in Westeros. Fortification during the Age of Heroes was generally based on ring forts, in the style of the Fist of the First Men. A few castle sites were founded by the first men and had been inhabitable for millennia. Winterfell, Storm's End, Casterly Rock, Pike, Old Town, and even Highgarden. But during the Age of the Heroes itself, they were much smaller and timbersome. Moat Cailin struggled, but the location gave it a bit of an oversight, as Moat Cailin is planted in a specific location within the swampy land of the Neck, making it basically impossible to take the north without taking Moat Cailin. The war between the first men and the children of the forest established this, and some allegations believed that it was there long before the war between them. I also want to talk about several major locations that exist during the War of the Five Kings, but do not exist during the War of the Long Night / the Age of the Heroes. Most notably, King's Landing does not exist. It is just a bunch of hills at this point. Open field next to Blackwater River. Within the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros, the Targaryens pretty much built a lot of everything that we see in that land. Even though in present day the Baratheons and the Lannisters have hold on it, the Targaryens set foot on everything. And Dragonstone's not even built during this time, so it just shows you that the impact of the Targaryens hasn't even happened yet. By the time that the Targaryens set foot on Dragonstone, or what would be Dragonstone, even Harrenhal is just beginning construction. It is said that the last couple stones were being placed when the Targaryens set foot onto Westeros. The Freys only built the twins 600 years of being considered a noble house, and the Aryan River Run were just newly built after the Andals invaded. So it's very clear that the roads and how cities and how things like that and the castles functioning in this time are slim to none. Westeros has 5 major cities altogether, but in present day, Flea Bottom doesn't exist because King's Landing doesn't exist. And Old Town, though it is there, it's pretty newly discovered. It's hard to call anything a city besides maybe Lannisport at this time, and even that, there's not enough people. So really, we don't have very many major cities, and the population, I would say, is pretty slim to none in Westeros, especially since the only people we have are the children of the forest and the first men. Once the Andals invade, there's more people then. Also, it's unclear how much long-distance traveling or trade the first men did. I mean, they have odds stacked against them. They only have bronze. Their technology is far to none. I mean, when we did the Dawn Age, we're like, oh, the first men are coming in with new technology, the children of the forest only have twigs and pebbles. But now looking at the first men compared to the Andals, the first men have nothing. and we have no idea how they trade. And that's the whole reason why they crossed the Arm of Dorn, was because they didn't have ships, they had horses. Now, taking a break from Westeros, in Essos, the Valyrian freehold first rose only 5,000 years ago, with the tumbling shepherds of Valyria discovering how to tame dragon. And they used this to conquer the vast continent of Essos. The Valyrians later settled in colonies to their west, which would later become the Free Cities, none of which existed during the Age of Heroes either. During this period, the western end of Essos were the Free Cities, were later located and divided by the Andals to the north and the Rhoynar to the west, along the river network. The Dothraki haven't even yet settled in the Dothraki Sea, as they migrated west in the Barden Mountains thousands of years later, but some accounts differ and it's hard to know exactly when. After the Long Night, some ships began to migrate from the Sun Isles, beginning to discover oceans around Old Town. It is said the first settlers recognized Old Town beginning from the Sun Islander ships. Koth and Yeti did exist around the same time of the Long Night, but some accounts differ, as the Shadowbinders of Ashai claim that they existed since the end of time, or the beginning of time, and none can be the wiser. At the time leading up to the Long Night, of course, the Wall and the Night's Watch didn't yet exist. The Order of the Maesters didn't exist until the Age of Heroes came to an end. At least some form of it could have been recognized, but it accounts that it did not exist. It alleges that a scholarly based in Old Town, but not much is remembered by this or the origins of the legacy. But despite this, they formed a university-like organization in the art of the context, keeping history within itself and the facets of the Maesterdry, scanning messages through the Raven network, later recognizing it as the Maesters. Very little is known about the attitude of the first men regarding gender. I'm going to assume that because they are known as the first men, that they may have not adopted the same ideology of women, and it was a patriarchal society, in a general sense of it. Even that though those customs didn't come until Aegon the Conqueror, and some of those customs when the Andals and the Rhoynar. In the present day, the North still follow the old gods of the forest, but critically, they have adopted the southern Westeros traditions from the Andals, that daughters only inherit power after the decease of brothers. But I also disagree that present-day Westeros in the North, Ned Stark's time, probably isn't a good measure of what the ancient First Men were like. Some groups that descend from the First Men do feature female political leaders and warriors. The free folk beyond the wall, the hill tribes of the Vale, and the clannic men of the Neck. Counter evidence is that the Ironborn also are descended from the First Men, but their culture adopts the ideology that women cannot be warriors or political leaders. I just thought I would add this in because we really have to understand what time period we're in when we talk about the Age of Heroes. Legendary figures. The Age of Heroes takes its name from the legendary figures that lived through this impressive time period. Even though these figures showed profound excellencies with their deeds and conquests, they are still talked about in present-day Westeros, showing how much of an impact they left on their noble lineage of Westeros, claiming their descendants of the ones who have followed. Brandon the Builder is said to be a mastermind. He constructed the wall.
Thousands and thousands of years ago, Brandon the Builder had raised Winterfell, and some said the wall.
He is the ancestor of House Stark, and he is the one who built Winterfell.
But the blood of the first men still flowed in the veins of the Starks, and his own gods were the old ones, The nameless, faceless gods of the greenwood they shared with the vanished children of the forest. At the centre of the grove, an ancient weirwood brooded over a small pool, where the waters were black and cold. The heart tree, Ned called it.
Other people believe that he also helped other noble houses make their house seats, such as Storm's End and the High Tower. Stark remains the descendant of him, and Brandon the Builder is known by many for being the first king of the North and also being a legendary figure during the Age of Heroes. His valor does not go unknown, and most people talk about him with great honor and responsibility. Durin Godgrief, Durin is credited to rise the mighty castle of Storm's End as a defense against the powerful winds and rains that blow upon the coast of Storm's End.
The song said the Storm's End had been raised in ancient days by Durin, the first Storm King, who had won the love of the fair Eleni, daughter of the sea god and the goddess of the wind. And when the dawn came at last, he declared war upon the gods and vowed to rebuild. 5 more castles he built, each larger and stronger than the last, only to see them smashed asunder when the gale winds came howling up Shipbreaker Bay, driving great walls of water before them. A 7th castle he raised, most massive of all.
House Durrandon, the ruler of the Stormlands before Aegon's conquest, claimed descendants from him. In turn, House Bracken claimed descendant from Durrandon as Orys Baratheon married the daughter of the last Storm King after the conquest. According to some legends, Doran was actually helped by young Brandon the Builder before Brandon was known as the creator of Winterfell and founder of House Stark.
Some said the children of the forest helped him build it, shaping the stones with magic. Others claimed that a small boy told him what he must do, a boy who would grow to be Bran the Builder.
Of course, many maesters doubt this, but the fact still remains that somebody knew something and left it in history books in present day. Lan the Clever, a famous golden-haired trickster who was able to swipe House Casterly out of their ancestral stronghold, Casterly Rock.
The Lannisters were an old family, tracing their descent back to Lan the Clever, a trickster from the Age of Heroes, who was no doubt as legendary as Bran the Builder, though far more beloved of singers and tale-tellers. In the songs, Lan was a fellow who winkled the Castleys out of Casterly Rock with no weapon but his wits, and stole gold from the sun to brighten his curly hair.
Though there are many stories on how he took the castle from the Casterlys, nobody truly knows how he did it with just his wit alone. These stories also claim that he was over 300 years old, siring 100 children to House Lannister, claiming descendant upon them all. The Grey King, the first ruler of the Ironborn, he is known for slaying the sea dragon Nada, taking a mermaid as his wife, and ruling for 1,000 years. He is thought to rule the Iron Islands and also the sea below.
Naga's ribs became the beams and pillars of his long hall, just as her jaws became his throne. For 1,000 years and 7 he reigned here, Aaron recalled. Here he took his mermaid wife, and planned his wars against the storm god. From here he ruled both stone and salt, wearing robes of woven seaweed and a tall pale crown made from Naga's teeth. But that was in the dawn of days, when mighty men still dwelt on earth and sea.
He also taught men how to weave and net sails, and carried the very first longship from the wood of a demon tree. Nearly all noble houses of the Iron Islands claim that they are descended from him. Garth Greenhand. Stories say that Garth was the first man who taught other people how to farm land and plow field. With this, he became the most fertile man alive, giving way to many crop cycles and fertility cycles. People say that he sired over an uncountable amount of children, and all noble houses from the Reach claimed descendants of him. House Gardner claimed to be descendants from Garth's eldest son, known as Garth the Gardener. Eventually, they would unify all of the Reach under their rule and remain in power for thousands of years, but were entirely wiped out during Aegon's conquest. House Tyrell does not claim direct male descent from the Gardners, as they are an Andal family that came to the Reach thousands of years later. But the Tyrells did in fact marry with First Men families over the centuries, so they do claim to be descendants from the Gardners through the female line, and thus Garth Greenhand still lives on. Eleanor Eversweet, the first beekeeper, she fell in love with honey, so she made a pact with the king of the bees to care for all of her children. House Beesbury claims to be descended from her. A daughter of Garth Greenhand, who was so cunning that she had 3 husbands at once, but none of them knew of the other's existence. House Floor of Brightwater claims to be descended from one of her husbands. Gilbert of the Vine. According to legend, it was Gilbert who first brought men to the arbor to make grape wine that grew from the island. House Redwine claims to be descendant of him. Harlan the Hunter and Helen of the Horn, 2 twin sons of Garth Greenhand. They are said to have raised a castle of Horn Hill and shared a woods witch as a wife for hundreds of years, never aging as long as they laid with her every full moon. House Tully claims descent from them. River Run and the Crownlands and Dorne, they don't necessarily have historical founders on the scale of Bran the Builder or Lan the Clever during this time period. While certain locations of noble houses are still beginning, their ancestors either don't date back to this time or at a fairly marginalized scale. During the time of the Age of the Heroes, the Riverlands rarely even exist as a fortified kingdom, so it's mostly founders are myths and legends during this time. The Crownlands didn't exist until Aegon's conquest, and doing so, those are just a motte of hills that don't really have any leadership under a kingdom. Other continents or countries, such as Dorne, aren't really evolved or in the play of the Age of Heroes, as Nymeria didn't come until like 1,000 years with the Rhoynar and the conquest of history accuracy. While the Age of Heroes is scrutinized as a period of time with not a lot of source material in Westeros,
The Age of Heroes lasted for thousands of years, in which kingdoms rose and fell, noble houses were founded and withered away, and great deeds were accomplished. Yet what we truly know of those ancient days is hardly more than what we know of the Dawn Age. The tales we have now are the work of septons and maesters, writing thousands of years after the fact. Yet unlike the children of the forest and the giants, the first men of this Age of Heroes left behind some ruins and ancient castles that can corroborate parts of the legends. And there are stone monuments in the barrow fields and elsewhere marked with their runes. It is through these remnants that we can begin to ferret out the truth behind the tales.
little is known about this time period, and the facts that I'm pulling will be about the main series of A Song of Ice and Fire, and most of the books revolving around Samwell Tarly points this out to Jon Snow, that Westeros did not have a congruent language or timekeeping until the Andals arrived. The First Men's writing system contained runes and scripts, some sigils, as seen that sigils from House Royce. Many surviving scripts or fragments during this piece of time have been translated, and the parts of the stories of the Age of Heroes is what follows. From the most important factors during this time is the rise and fall of many different kingdoms, and they've been turned into poets and songs, books and legends. During this time period, basic knowledge and information throughout the years has been scrubbed or just does not exist. And if you do find basic knowledge, it is in the Citadel. And a lot of counts and records of other religions and beliefs just don't exist besides the ones I have already mentioned. In such circumstances, the existence of the legendary figures and valors of noble houses, or the cataclysmic event known as the Long Night, can't be definitively proven history that the Maesters tell. The lack of the first-hand knowledge and evidence simply because many years have passed since then, and we leave the ruins of what happened in the Age of Heroes and in the Long Night up to interpretation from myths and songs. The Pact on the Isle of Faces, a treaty that ended the war between the first men and the children of the forest. The pact came to be after the first men and the children fought each other to a steadfast, and the two races agreed to sign a peace existence. It was entered into by the greenseers and wood dancers of the children of the forest, and the chiefs of the heroes of the first men, on a small island in the middle of the large lake known as God's Eye in the Riverlands. The children remain to their steadfastness of the forest, while the first men were able to settle upon lands, make castles, high plains, conquer the plowed fields, mountains, and terrains. While they agreed that they would not harm their sacred weirwood trees, cutting them down with axes no longer. Faces were carved on the trees of the island to agree this sacred treaty, so the gods could bear witness to the pact, giving its name the Isle of Faces. The sacred order of the Green Men was established to maintain and keep watch over the Isle of Faces. The signing of the pact marked on the end of the Dawn Age and the beginning of the Age of Heroes. It marked 4,000 years of friendship, prosperity between the two enigmatic races, with the men and the children of the forest becoming steadfast friends and leadership. The pact endured all along the Age of Heroes, and even in the Long Night. And the birth of the Seven Kingdoms made way even until, centuries later, when the Andals crossed the narrow sea. The Long Night. In this time, the night seemed to last a generation, and the longest, coldest, darkest winter descended upon Westeros, the ice spreading down from the north, and under the cover of darkness, the others descended onto Westeros.
You mean the others? Bran said querulously. The others? Old Nan agreed. Thousands and thousands of years ago, a winter fell that was cold and hard and endless beyond all memory of man. There came a night that lasted a generation, and kings shivered and died in their castles, even as the swineherds in their hovels. Women smothered their children rather than see them starve, and cried and felt their tears freeze on their cheeks.
From the northernmost north, marching, killing, and raising dead, using the dead within their armies, an unlifeless force, nearly destroying all men in Westeros. The Long Night came to an end after the Battle of the Dawn. The children and the first men united to defeat the others with dragonglass weapons, with the Night's Watch pushing them back into always winter. Not much is known about the Battle of the Dawn, although legendary figures known as Azor Ahai, or the Prince that is Promised, and the Last Hero are referenced during this time period quite a bit. All that is known is that the others came to Westeros, the Long Night began, and they were defeated. That is why we have the Wall in Westeros today. In the midst of a dark night, the others emerged from the farthest of north, wielding razor-sharp and thin glass, rising the dead to fight the living, and the children of the forest and their allies, the first men, fought them valiantly. but they were divided southwards by their advance. The others were eventually checked when the discovery of weapons made from dragon glass could eventually kill them. According to the song, the night that ended, the first members of the Night's Watch rode to the others and pushed them back to always winter, incurring the Battle of the Dawn. Maesters alleged that they defeated the others, incongruent establishing the wall. Approximately 6,000 years or 8,000 years ago, true Westerosi history, but none of this is confirmed, just by the Maesters of the Citadel. The Legend of Azor Ahai, the legendary hero wielding a burning sword called Lightbringer. According to tales, Azor Ahai from the followers of Valor. In some cultures believe a valiant hero fought alongside those who fought in the Battle of the Dawn. Melisandre has mentioned the prince that is promised and Azor Ahai interchangeably, but she often refers to Azor Ahai far more. It is not known if Azor Ahai is connected with those who fought in Westeros' legends of the last hero, who lived during the Long Night and helped defeat the others, but is widely speculated that they are talking about them. According to legend from the Far East, the blood betrayal of the Bloodstone Emperor began a long night, or the Age of Darkness. The Empire of Adon was forming, and a great hero rose to defeat the darkness laying on the world, according to legend from Ashai. The followers of R'hllor say that this hero was named Azor Ahai, while some cultures call them different names, such as Zakumba the Hero, Yentar, Norimo, Norfemian, and Eric Shadow Chaser. Tales from E.T. speak of a heroic woman with a monkey tail, and other legends from Westeros say that a last hero was granted aid from the children of the forest. Azor Ahai needed to forge a hero's sword, so he labored for 30 days and 30 nights at the Scarce Fire Temple until it was done. However, when he went to temper it in water, the sword broke. He was not one to give up so easily, so he started over again. Azor Ahai took 50 days and 50 nights to make another sword, better than the first. To temper it this time, he captured a lion and drove the sword into its heart. But once more, the steel shattered. The third time, with a heavy heart, for he knew beforehand what he must do to finish the blade. Azor Ahai worked for 100 days and 100 nights until it was finished. Then, at the time, he called his wife Nisa Nisa and asked her to bare her breast. He drove his sword into her heart, and her soul and living spirit melded with the blade, creating Lightbringer. The red-hot fiery sword could not be tempered, and was known as the Red Sword of Heroes. Lightbringer was forged, always warm to the touch. Although Azor Ahai had Lightbringer, he did not fight alone. He led valiant men into battle, defeating the darkness. The Jade Companion mentioned that when the heroes thrusted the sword or blade into the monsters, it created a bursting of flame. According to prophecy in ancient books of Ashai, for over 5,000 years, Azor Ahai is to be reborn again as a champion sent by R'hllor. This will occur after the longest summer, when an evil coldness sweeps over the nation again with its darkness. It is said that they will be wielding Lightbringer once more. Azor Ahai will stand against the darkness, and if he fails, the world fails. With prophecy comes speculation. And lots of people at one point or another in history believed that they either were the prince that was promised. When Prince Rhaegar was young, him and Maester Aemon both believed that Rhaegar was the prince. But as he grew older, he believed that his infant son, young Aegon was the fitness of the prophecy. Becoming so obsessed with prophecy alone, he believed he needed 3 heads of the dragon to complete it. The last hero. The first men lived during the long night, according to Westeros legend. It is known if they were connected to Azor Ahai, but a person saving the world from the great darkness is legendary for being the last hero. Legends of the North state the last hero and his companions went in search of the children of the forest during the long night, thousands of years ago. The only survivor of the group, after being attacked by giants, wigs, and others, the last hero eventually reached the children and granted assistance. The Night's Watch was formed and won the Battle of the Dawns, that ended the generational long darkness that was set upon by the others in retreating them back to the lands of always winter. The fate of the last hero is unknown. Oh, my sweet summer child, what do you know of fear? Fear is for the winter, my little lord. When the snow falls 100 feet deep, and the ice winds come howling out of the north, when the sun hides its face for years at a time, and little kids are born and die all in darkness, while the dire wolves grow gaunt and hungry, and the white walkers move through the woods unseen. The others, thousands upon thousands of years ago, a winter fell, so cold and hard and endless beyond the memory of man. When they came, the darkness set foot a generational long winter, and kings starved and died in their castles. Even the whistling of howling wolves did not eat. Women suffered and smothered their child rather than watching them starve, cry, and fear the freezing cold on their cheeks. In the darkness, the others came for the first time. They were cold things, dead things, that hated iron and fire, the touch of the sun, and even the creation of hot blood in veins. They swept over steadfast cities and kingdoms, falling upon valiant heroes and armies, sweeping them in whole, riding pale dead horses and riding hogs. Some had ice spiders. All of the weapons of man could not withstand their grievousness, and even maids and suckling babes found no pity in them. Now these were the days before the Andals came, and even longer before women fled across the narrow sea from the city of the Ruin. And 100 kingdoms of those times were the kingdoms of the first men, who had taken the lands from the children. Yet here and there it was the steadfastness of the woods, the children who lived in the wooden cities and melted hills, and the faces who kept watch over years. As the coldness and death swept the earth, the last hero maintained and to seek out the children. After the long night, the wall was built. With the others defeated, Bran the Builder, with the aid of giants, the first men, and perhaps even the children of the forest, rose the wall. A mountain so high upon it, people believe ice and magic hold it together to shield the realm of men from the gargantuous beasts of the others, creating a solemn brotherhood of the Night's Watch to guard the realm of men from those who would seek carnage over mankind. It is said that Bran the Builder also built Winterfell, becoming the first king beyond winter and the founder of House Stark. The wall is a massive barrier made of mostly ice that traces the border of the north from the Seven Kingdoms, spreading its wings long and high from molten ice winds. The wall is 100 leagues long, 300 miles, and reaches over 700 feet of height. Also, some foundations block certain molten hill regions, such as Greygard, send in 900 feet in the air. Tunnels have been cut through the wall. As each castle of the Night's Watch, they are sealed with ice and stone. However, castles have been abandoned for some time due to the lack of rangers. Cells are also kept down there to store food and other perishable items. Castles within the Night's Watch. The Night's Watch rose 19 castles to guard the 100 leagues of wall, although they were never able to man all 19. They were only able to man 17 at once. Over the last 300 years, as manpower dwindled and dropped significantly, there was abandoned castles. Old Nan refers to them as ghost castles. The Knight's Fort was the first abandoned during King Jaehaerys' reign. Only 3 castles remain inhabited, though sometimes a longer force is sent out one of the abandoned castles for a fortnight or a moon's rise. The maintenance of the castles are Castle Black, the largest, located at the north end of the King's Road, and held by nearly 600 brothers. The Shadow Tower, the westernmost of the accompanying castles, is guarded by 200 of the men of the Night's Watch, and the eastern bay by the sea. The port of Night's Watch was the smallest galley guarded by the western end of the wall. After the battle, the Night's Watch is a military organization set up to defend the wall. Mostly now in present day, they believe they are defending the realm of men by free folk, but they were established in the sole intention to protect the realm against the others, pushing them back to always winter. It is their sacred vow to protect the realm from the others descending their darkness upon the land for another generation. Not long after the wall was completed, the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch broke his vow. He was seduced by another woman beyond the wall. Despite himself declaring Night King and rising a rebellion from the Night's Watch with his personal army during the darkest year of his reign. During the years of his reign, horrific atrocities were committed, of which legends are still told several millennia after his reign. The Starks of Winterfell and the King Beyond the Wall, Juruman, joined forces to defeat the Night King, and thus restoring honor to the Night's Watch. The same German who would later find the Horn of Winter, which is said to be able to wake giants from the earth. The Horn of Winter. The Horn of Winter, also known as the Horn of Jorman or the Jorman's Horn, is a legendary horn with prophecies of ancient magic thousands of years ago. Jorman, a first king beyond the wall, was supposed to blow the horn to wake up giants from the earth. Free folk believe that if they blow the horn, it will bring down the wall. Some maesters believe or even doubt of the horn's existence. Well, I can keep talking about the Long Night or the Age of Heroes for another hour, but I'll give you guys a break. Make sure to stay tuned for my shorts that I post and next week's video. I'm going to be posting very consistently this year, so feel free to hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. Watchers Beyond the Wall.